Like, you want me to come up there and stand with you? That's different. What's your philosophy on city commission intervention on private property?
There should just be none, except for code enforcement, and that's, the code's there for a reason, but I think the code needs to be tweaked a little bit. They shouldn't be going on the private property and tagging cars. There was one, I think it was in your neighborhood, that was, it was in the driveway.
Several.
But there was one particular, I think, where the folks took off the plate and they went to get a new plate, and by the time they came back, they were tagged for not having a plate, right? Was that the story, something like that, right? That's the kind of thing that's ridiculous. You shouldn't be going into some. They did it in our neighborhood too. Somebody bought a brand new van. It wasn't brand new. It was an old van, but it was new to them. And they put it in the driveway, and it was facing out, and there was no tag on it. And boom, they tagged it on private property. Now, someone said that this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, and I'd like to see if that's true or not. You should not be going onto private property. Now, if you have derelict properties, that's what code is for. But when it comes down to little things like tagging cars in driveways, I don't think that should be done. Other than that, the city commission should have no say with private property.
Thank you, Richard.
One more time?
And by the way, I don't write all the questions, just a few. What's your philosophy on city commission intervention on private property?
Okay, one of the things that I noticed it on the planning and zoning board, and I've noticed it as I'm knocking on doors, and I've noticed it for the years that I've been here, that if you have a problem in your home, if you have a problem with your home, if you have a problem with your neighbors or your streets, it may or may not get addressed depending upon who you know and who you call. Some people have the connections, other people don't have the connections. That happens in both residential as well as business. So I think that someone intervening, someone calling the commissioner, of course, you could call me, but in general, we shouldn't be able to call our commissioners and get out of having an issue. We should not be able to call our commissioners or call anyone on his staff and have an exception made on our behalf. We have to have clear, consistent, strong government. We have to have clear, consistent, strong customer service. And once we have that, then I think that many of the frustrations that our residents currently feel will be taken care of. Thank you.
Thanks,
To me, this question is clearly about code enforcement, and on this matter, I will quote my friend and colleague, Commissioner Herman Robinson, when he says that with code enforcement, we are raising the standard in Lake Worth. Not too long ago in Lake Worth, we only had 2 code enforcement officers. From then, we went from 2 code enforcement officers to by the time I was in office, we had 6 code enforcement officers. And still in certain parts of the city, especially west of Dixie Highway, where there are many, many issues and many, many bad landlords and people who had not taken care of their properties the way that they should be taking care of their properties, I felt that we needed a bigger code enforcement presence, in particular in that area. So under our time here, we went from 6 code enforcement officers to 13 code enforcement officers, 2 of which are not paid for by you, the taxpayer. They're actually paid for by the federal government through a grant program known as the Community Development Block Grant Program. I was instrumental in us getting that money and using it for this purpose. So I understand that sometimes code enforcement officers can be overzealous. Sometimes code enforcement officers can write people up for violations that don't stick and that don't make sense. But the purpose of code enforcement is to raise the standard in this city, to ensure that people who own properties, whether you live here or not, whether you're a homeowner or not, whether you're an absentee landlord or not, and we have many, many absentee landlords in the city, to make sure that they adhere to the standards that we set forth in our code. And that I support. The issue about tagging people's vehicles on their private property is actually a nuanced one. A code enforcement officer cannot enter private property or enter a person's curtilage, which is what the Supreme Court says, to search for a code enforcement violation. However, if the violation is visible from the right-of-way, for example, if your car has a flat tire in your driveway, the code enforcement officer can enter your property to cite you for that violation. And if, in the process of citing you for a violation that they have seen from the right-of-way, if they see additional violations within plain view, they can cite you for those as well. So my understanding is that our code enforcement team is engaging in constitutional enforcement and compliance here, and I understand that sometimes they can do things that are a little zany, but we're raising the standard, and we need to continually refocus code enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you for mentioning raising the standard. I'm very much in favor of raising the standard. We are raising the standard, and I want to continue to raise the standard. What I am concerned about is code enforcement's judgment and approach to raising the standard. When they see an issue, they need to find out why the issue exists. And if there's a time requirement that they have on the books, they need to make a judgment as to whether they can extend the time required to fix the issue. Their training and judgment and flexibility is what I think is lacking. And I have asked the directors of code enforcement to change their training program so that these people go out with a badge and become different people. And I want them to know that they're neighbors and that they can address issues in flexible manners so that the issue goes away. The other thing with intervention with private property is that I'm very interested in going after derelict and empty property, and code needs to hammer derelict and bad landlords and vacant property. And if we can intervene by incentivizing and discouraging bad property ownership, that's the other part of intervention that government can be a part of. But I am going to insist that the code enforcement change their modus operandi in correcting violations.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. I think the next question we start with Richard. Do you know what an opportunity zone is? Does Lake Worth have one? Where is it? What can you do in one? Sorry, I'm reading handwriting.
I don't know whether we have one, but certainly I know what an opportunity zone is. The new tax law was passed, and when it came enacted in 2017, there's a hole in the tax law where you can have a capital gain, sell that, roll it over into an opportunity zone fund, and not pay the capital gains on that. You hold it there for 10 years, and then the capital gains, even on the opportunity fund, could be zero. What happens at the end of 10 years is, let's say it's a long-term capital gain, it's a 20% rate that you're going to pay on taxes. It gets dropped to 5% in that 10 years. So you see a lot of hedge fund managers now doing this. They're rolling money from their capital gains into opportunity zones, and it's specific for poor cities like ours. Now, I don't know if we have one, but this is something I was very interested in diving into lately as to how we can be part of that pool. There are just billions and billions of dollars, and what they do is they come in and they restore and renovate and build and develop in poor communities like ours. Some of it has to be affordable housing, not all of it does. Some of it could be just regular development, but that's exactly what an opportunity zone is. That's brand, that's 2 years old in the tax law.
Thank you, Richard. Kathy.
I can't say that I'm an expert on this one. I have read, and basically, ditto Richard. I would say that we need to work hand in hand with our CRA, and perhaps, again, I don't know it, or I'm sorry, this is one I don't know, but I will definitely know before the end of the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you. Richard was mostly right on the opportunity zone thing. I just want to say that when the person takes their capital gains, they're not rolling it necessarily into a fund, but they are investing it into a census tract that has been chosen by the governor of their state, because the census tract includes people of very, very low income. And if they continue to invest in that census tract, their capital gains will not be taxed until, I believe, the very end. So it's almost like that census tract becomes a sort of 401k for investors. We do have one census tract in the city that was designated by the governor as an opportunity zone, and I'll tell you what that process goes like. So our city submitted, I believe, 5 or 6 different census tracts to the governor for consideration as an opportunity zone. In my opinion, the best census tract was actually Tropical Ridge, because it includes Lake and Lucerne, west of Dixie Highway, where we would like to see more action. Unfortunately, the governor did not choose that area. The governor chose the area furthest south to the city, just west of Dixie Highway, that's very disconnected from the downtown, that provides fewer opportunities for people to invest there as profitably as they would otherwise. I'm glad that we have an opportunity zone, but I do believe that perhaps some partisan politics might have played into that selection of that census tract in the district of that commissioner. What I will say is this. The problem that I'm seeing with the opportunity zones, and again, I sit on the board of directors for the Housing Leadership Council, is the financing that developers can access for these particular properties. It's not really understood as well by banks as I would like to see, and the financing requirements are very little onerous. I know there's one bank that finances investments in these areas with preferred equity. It's not really the best role. So we do have an opportunity zone. It's not in the best area. I hope that we get investment there. I am, however, not hopeful that the investment will occur, unfortunately, because of its location. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
Yes, we do have an opportunity zone, and it was created by the governor, and it's a complex system of financing incentives. What concerns me is the transparency of how it came to be. The commission had nothing to say about it. The community had nothing to say about it. It was decided, and that kind of operation in the government really is a concern for me, because if you're going to hear opportunity zone and you don't know about it, you're going to make up your own story as to where it is and how it happened. And the rumor mill in Lake Worth is strong, and I think that we are responsible to communicate much better with our citizens about an opportunity zone or a planning and zoning issue that's going to have to be, there should be a subset of planning and zoning in this opportunity zone. I think it's a justified area to try to incentivize investment.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's a great question, and I appreciate and respect Commissioner Robinson, but what he's talking about has nothing to do with qualified opportunity zones. So qualified opportunity zones, everybody up here is right, we do have one. Commissioner Hardy got a little bit more into it than I was even aware of. I do know that it's actually structured so that it's a number of years. So your first 2 years, you get some tax break, 7 years, and then you get your full tax break at the end of it. Yes, we do have an opportunity zone. Exciting to know. It is just south of 12th Avenue South, and it is in that southern area of District 1. So the qualified opportunity zone is basically, it's just a tax break where you can use capital gain. And these are not residents that are investing in this, by the way, just to be clear. These are not residents. These are big hedge funds, like Mr. Garcia said. These are large private capital investments. They happen all over the country. It's nothing that planning and zone has anything to do with. The community doesn't get involved in it. And yes, the governor does decide where they go. We can lobby for it, but the governor decides where it goes. So here's what I talked about at the very beginning, was plans. And I'm really, really excited this question came up, because I have a plan for this, or at least a thought on it, that looks like it could, needs some exploring, but looks like it could work. That qualified opportunity zone lands squarely on our solar field, which, if you guys don't know, we have a solar field. It's pretty interesting to go visit. It's on an old landfill, and it's a large swath of land. And right now we have about 10, I don't want to say how many we are, because I may not be right, but it's a small number of panels, powers some number of homes. But we have a large piece of land there that could be developed through a public-private partnership. Because it's in an opportunity zone, that creates the real private investment that we could use on that land. So if we could do a public-private investment where we transfer that landfill land that's not being used anyway, we get a group in there who comes in and builds a true solar field, a state-of-the-art, forward-looking solar field, that's really, really exciting. And because it lands right in that qualified opportunity zone, we can do that, or at least we can explore it. So that's an idea, and I'd love to explore that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, John. I'm going to do one quick thank you to John Faust for providing the sound equipment and assistance here. And because he's offered this, I would like to point out the fact that we are all very cold in here, especially those of us wearing campaign shirts, those that are wearing campaign shirts. John Faust will offer a layer of protection for, is it $10? $10. It's
a fundraiser for all the neighborhoods. Hey, we've already raised almost $8,000.
That long sleeve shirt looks very interesting. Okay, we're gonna try and pick up the pace here. So I'm gonna ask you this next question, which I believe has a very quick answer. So we are not going to time this one. With respect that everyone answers it quickly. First question, this question is for Kathy. How do you plan to be available to constituents?
Well, I am semi-retired and I work part-time. I will absolutely have set business hours in City Hall with an open door policy. I will answer your calls when I can. I will get back to you when you leave messages. I will return your emails. I have been on the resident side of this and I understand frustrations. Again, I will set regular business hours. I will have a business acumen and discipline to my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Commissioner Harvey.
I plan to continue making myself available to the residents of the city by attending their neighborhood association meetings, by in some cases going to their churches and communing with them there, by answering my phone. Many residents have my personal phone number. There's a family that called me actually just recently to deal with some issues with their landlord. I was very happy to interface with them over Facebook. So I'm typically very available, and I thank the residents of the city for reaching out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Robinson.
I'm inviting everybody to coffee at the bookseller every Wednesday at 9:30. And I consider this a full-time job, and I answer my phone all the time, anytime. So I'm accessible, and look forward to listening to citizen comment and suggestions, and even criticisms.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. Tom.
What a great question, because these are all great answers. You know, for me, what we've learned just in this campaign alone is just listening. So, okay, just listening. So, I'm excited. You know, I'm going to be working full time, but I'm excited to do the little things. So, answering by email, answering by phone, making myself available, being in City Hall, being in the neighborhood association meetings, and being here in these forums and being available. How's that for quick?
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
You know, in all my campaign literature, there's a phone number. It's actually my phone, my cell phone right here. It's not a burner phone for the campaign. I'm available for everyone just to pick up the phone and call me anytime, email me, text me, and I'm just available. I'm there. If I don't get to you right away, I'll call you right back if I'm on another line. But I'll tell you that when they come in, especially with the campaign, everybody has questions for you. And you have to answer it now, you have to do it now, or else it winds up at the bottom of a pile with another 20 phone calls or texts. So I'm doing that, and that's how I will do it.
Thank you, Richard. We're going to move on to 1-minute responses just to get rid of the last few of these. And the first one is for Commissioner Robinson, right? Robinson, Harvey. Sorry. Your first name's Commissioner. Should the city be spending millions of dollars on properties for surface parking before they have an actual plan and parking study?
No. Yes. The answer is no. And you know, when it was asked what was the major regret that I have or the major mistake that I made in my life, it was the first vote that I took to allow the CRA to have that money to buy land. And my understanding is that it was not just for surface parking. There's also the potential that there would be a public-private partnership where someone would build a residential development with a garage underneath it, and that some of those spaces would be available to the public. I still regret that vote, and so it was the wrong vote to take. The answer is no. We do not need more parking. I think we need to embrace our identity as Lake Worth. The crazy thing is 100,000 people showed up this past weekend, and as far as I know, they parked. So this idea that people don't come here because we don't have parking is wrong. They don't come here because we don't give them enough to do, and because we don't create opportunities to house them here in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
It's a difficult decision. I don't regret investing in our opportunity to preempt greed. When there is a need for housing, there is an opportunity for people to invest in Lake Worth. And if we own it, we can specify what's going to be there. And so, yes, I think it was important to invest and get ahead of people holding up progress by wanting 3 times what the market was before somebody was interested in it. And the importance of being able to designate what goes there is part of ownership. So, Commissioner Hardy and I always are in agreement with moving forward. And I respect his votes always.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
If I heard the end of the question, the end of the question is without a parking plan, correct? Can you say it again? Please.
Should the city be spending millions of dollars on the properties for the surface parking before they have an actual plan and parking study?
Right. So that end of the question is the big thing. So I've been advocating this on this campaign this entire time that we need a parking plan. We need a parking plan and a mobility program for downtown once and for all to solve this problem. Should the city be spending millions of dollars? It's a bit of a loaded question, and at the risk of this being an unpopular answer, I'm going to give it because this is what I've been doing my entire campaign. And if I lose because I give unpopular answers that I believe are the right answers for the city of Lake Worth, then I'm okay with that. So here's my answer. The 3 properties that were bought most recently, one of them was renovated, the other 2 are historic, but they're also pretty run down. If you've ever walked by them and look at them, nobody's bought them, nobody's going to be interested in buying them. We had as a city an opportunity and we had to seize it, and that opportunity was to assemble some land in downtown so we can start planning for parking and addressing parking like every other city in Florida does. So what I should say is on the one that's renovated, what I'd like to do is I'd like to look into a plan of the city using its own money to buy the renovated one and relocate it to Bryant Park and create a little tourist center out of it. We could do some cool things like that.
Thank you, Richard. Remember, I'm reading somebody else's handwriting. Should the city be spending millions of dollars on properties for surface parking before they have an actual plan and parking study?
Yeah, we just spent $2.445 million on those properties on L&M Street for surface parking to rip down historic buildings. And the one that Tom's talking about that's renovated, the city's already talking about taking that piece of property for themselves. And they offered on the market at $689,000. CRA paid $620 for it. These guys are paying top dollar for these properties, and they're just sitting there waiting to be torn down or moved somewhere else. So we have other flat spaces that are already there without having to buy historic stuff that we can put parking on if necessary. Again, put another deck here or there on some of the lots we have already, and our parking problem solved, even when the other empty storefronts are filled.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
They should not have purchased these homes before we had a parking study completed and before we had one individual who I've been calling the parking czar, but that is one person whose sole purpose is to analyze and understand our parking needs, someone who will research parking throughout the country and parking needs. Again, the parking czar. So the short answer is no, they shouldn't have. What concerns me even more is the lack of visibility. This came up 3 times in a consent agenda. We should never be buying or selling real property on a consent agenda. The first time it was $1.2 million. The second time it was $625,000. The third time it was $500,000. And actually in 2017, when all of our diests talked about their top 3 priorities for paying sales tax, they all said a parking garage. So I'm sorry, Herman didn't say that. I think you were the one exception. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. In keeping with 1-minute answers, I have to simplify this 3-part or 4-part question. It involves the beach. I'm going to simplify it to, do you believe you should involve any public-private partnerships? And I lost track.
I think I was the first person.
person last time?
Commissioner Robinson. Let's just start with Commissioner Robinson.
Well, you know that the casino park is my priority. First of all, we need to recognize it as a park. So it's not a plaza. It's not going to make money. If we break even, that would be a wonderful thing. The management of the park is our responsibility. If we can do it without losing control of it, I would certainly like to do that. Sometimes outside management is a better opportunity. There are public works and leisure services has actually tried outsourcing a lot of their programs and found out that we can do it more economically in-house than outsourcing. So I look forward to the casino in full operation.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
I think maybe the only part of any of what I've heard that I agree on is that the casino complex itself is in fact a park. But here's the reality of the situation, everybody. Here's reality. So the casino complex itself is an absolute mess. We spent $3.5 million on a pool that's been closed twice in 10 years. That $3.5 million is resurfacing back in 2018. It's structural updates, and it's also operational costs, about $360,000 a year. Looking at as far as, knowing that we have a casino complex with 5,000 square feet that are being used for lifeguard housing and leisure services housing, the reason is because the pool complex itself used to be that, but it's closed and is structurally deficient. Should we allow for a public-private partnership on the beach? I would be okay with that. We need it because we don't have the money. The reality of the situation is we don't have the money to rebuild anything on that complex right now. Here's something that I won't ever be for. I'll never be for restricting any part of beach access to our residents. I'll never be for selling any part of our beach access to private development. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Richard.
It is one of the options that we voted for unanimously on the Finance Advisory Board August 28th of 2017 was to entertain a proper public-private partnership at the beach, should one come along. Our finances have changed with the penny sales tax money. We can rebuild parts of the things that need to be done at the casino. We can redo the pool and the pool area. We can fix the deficiencies that Commissioner Robinson talks about the loading area and the docks and things like that, the dumpsters and stuff like that. We have the money to do that if we do just the small parts. But if we want to do something a little more elaborate, we had 7 plans given us by Chris Zimmerman and CPC Architectures, and the first 4 of those tapped out at $15.1 million before adding contingencies and escalation. So we can do some things on our own, and we may need some people to come in and help us. It would be a delicate partnership where they would reap revenues and pay us rent, which is not selling the beach. And by the way, the beach cannot be sold. Let's remember that. You cannot sell the beach. It's in our charter. And you can only have a lease that's 20 years or under, so 19 years and 11 months.
Thanks, Richard. Catherine.
So private-public partnership is a really broad term. Some can say that right now Benny's and the city of Lake Worth is in a private-public partnership. I am not opposed to such a thing. I think that it would depend on the relationship. And when I talked to our finance, our new head of finance, I talked to him, I asked him specifically about